One of the Torah's greatest hits can be found in this week's Parsha, but because we read triennially, we did not read it today. But just, so let's look at it now. I'm going to invite you, if you still have the big red books, to turn to Leviticus chapter 19, verse 15. It's on page 697. And there it is, Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Love your fellow as yourself. I told my partner Amir that I would be speaking about Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha today, and he said, "That's amazing. That's the hardest mitzvah to follow." Because it kind of is, at the same time as it's also the most, like, we're all on board. It's not so easy to love our fellow all the time, both because it's hard to love people all the time, and because what does it even mean exactly? Right? Like, what does fulfilling the mitzvah actually mean? Is it a feeling that we're going for? Is it action? How do we know that we fulfilled it? How do we know when we're not fulfilling it? Who is our fellow? Who isn't our fellow? This is something that we could spend an entire year studying, I think, which some of us actually have been in the kind of lunch and learn Torah dessert and discussion class that's been happening. We've been looking at this concept of Judaism is about love and looking a lot at this verse and other verses. I'm going to focus just on one way in to Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, which starts by looking at it in its context. Because we often take this line out of its context because it's very strong on its own. Love your neighbor as yourself. But it comes in this section of really like 4 psukim together, starting at verse 17. Lo tisne et achicha belevavecha, hochiach tochiach et amitecha, velo tisa alav chit, lo tikom velo titor et bnei amecha, ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha ani Hashem. You shall not hate your kinsfolk in your heart, reprove your kinsman, but incur no guilt because of him. You shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge against your countrymen. Love your fellow as yourself. I am God. So it seems that Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, to love your fellow as yourself, has something to do with not holding hatred in your heart, reproving, giving tochacha, giving feedback to people when you are holding hatred in your heart, when things are not going so well, not taking vengeance, not bearing a grudge, and something also about knowing God. So the Ramban points out his way of interpreting these 4 lines together is that they're kind of descriptive. That one kind of leads to the other. So the way he says it is, if you find yourself feeling hatred in your heart, or you can think about it in like, that's a very strong word, hate, but like tightness in your heart. If you've got some surus against somebody in your heart, don't hold it there. Instead, reprove him. Instead, speak to this person about it. Enter into relationship. Say what it is that needs to be remedied. And therefore, you will incur no guilt because of him. Because you will not then take vengeance or bear a grudge against your countrymen. Right? If we hold things in our heart and we just like, oh yeah, I'm just bitter at this person, it's probably going to come out at some point. We've experienced this. We like think that we're really clever and we could just pretend to feel one way about someone. And often, like, something comes out at some point. So the Torah says, don't do it. Let it out. And then once you're in relationship with that person, once that repair has happened, what else is there except love your fellow as yourself? Then what's left is what's kind of always there underneath all of it, which is love. Ani Hashem, the way that I read that is, and from that place, can we not feel that we're all connected to something much greater than that? We still have the question, though, of how do we do this exactly? Because it seems that all of this then hangs on this idea of rebuking your neighbor. That love, that this act of love it comes about by being able to give other people tochacha, give other people tough feedback. And the Torah knows that this is hard. This is the hard stuff. We know that the Torah knows it's hard because this is the one word in this little section that's repeated. In the Hebrew it says hochiach tochiach. It doesn't just say reprove, it uses that word twice, hochiach tochiach, which is this kind of biblical grammar form that's meant to provide emphasis. So that same kind of form shows up in other places, and it means pay attention here, pay attention here. So it's something like, you must surely rebuke your neighbor. Rebuke your neighbor. Give people tochacha. this might be tough news for some of the more conflict avoidant among us, that we really have to do this, says the Torah. We're not getting out of this. If you want to fulfill the mitzvah, if you want to take it seriously, the mitzvah, ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, you have to notice when there's tightness in your heart, and you have to find ways to enter, to chochiach, tochiach. The Sfat Emet, who I keep bringing here because I've been learning him all year, this 19th century Hasidic Rebbe, adds another layer of meaning to what is chochiach, tochiach, why the repetition, what is the repetition coming to say. And he says that chochiach, tochiach is doubled in order to indicate that the person who does the tochacha should be included in the rebuke that he offers. So you give tochacha, but you need to include yourself. Chochiach, tochiach, chochiach, tochiach. Hence, the next line of don't bear sin on the other's account. Do not cast the entire burden of sin onto the transgressor, he says. Don't just go to the guy and say, you did this wrong, this is your fault. Instead, involve yourself in the matter and do your own piece of the tshuva. Then, surely your neighbor will feel roused to repent as well. So, bodily behavior. How do we model? And I think we've seen this also, like when we are able to offer constructive feedback to someone in a way that involves us also taking responsibility for what happened, it can really diffuse the situation, right? Like if I go to my husband and I say, you never do the dishes, that's gonna go one way. But if I go to him and I say, wow, both of us have been really dropping the ball on the dishes this month, I'm really sorry for my role in that, there's something else that can happen in that space. But, okay, what do we do then when we have a situation where we want to give tochacha to someone, but we really did not do anything wrong? Right? It's like, sometimes it's like, yeah, I could see the role that I played in this, but sometimes the other person just did the wrong thing. So how do I involve myself in this? How do I involve myself in this act of tochacha if I haven't actually done anything? So for example, I am sitting waiting for a coffee meeting with someone. That person is 30 minutes late to the meeting. I didn't do anything wrong. That person's late. So what do I do then? How do I give them tochacha at that moment? I'm sitting there. They're going to show up to the meeting. They're not going to apologize. I'm going to be totally grumpy about it and totally holding it into my heart the entire time. Okay, if I want to fulfill ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, I have to say something to them. I'm not going to say, like, it's my fault that you're late. It's not, right? So what do I do? Okay, have you heard of nonviolent communication? It's a particular method of a kind of framework for communication. It was developed by Marshall Rosenberg, nice Jewish man. Nonviolent communication, it's basically a way to structure difficult conversations that lead to more empathy, compassion, and connection. And I think it's a way to also live more by the Sfat Emet's instructions. The name nonviolent communication I find a little distracting because it just has the word violent in it, and then my mind goes places. I think that in modern Hebrew, when they talk about nonviolent communication, the term is actually tikshoret mekorevet, which means like communication that brings us closer. I think that's a much more kind of helpful term for this particular framework. And what tikshoret mekorevet, what nonviolent communication invites us to do, is to notice our own role in how we respond to whatever is happening, really specifically by noticing our emotions and the underlying needs which lead to them. So something happens, this person's 30 minutes late to a meeting, I notice how I feel about it, and then the theory is that if some feeling is arising, there is a need that is underlying that feeling, some kind of human need. So what arises in me is loneliness. The need under that might be connection. And similarly, anytime there's a feeling that arises, either it's a need that is being not met or a need that is being met. Right? If I'm feeling gratitude, my need for connection might be being met in that moment. And then what is arising is gratitude. And if we share, the idea is that if we share from that place of noticing our emotions, of noticing our needs, that there's a lot more space also for communicating, that we can actually communicate what it is that we want to be communicating. So this person is 30 minutes late to meet me for coffee, and they show up, they don't apologize. I'm going to say to them, it's really not cool that you're late. You've really disappointed me by showing up late. You clearly don't value my time. These are the things, like we say these things to people all the time. I just can't understand why you'd be so late when I did everything I could to make sure that you had the right time and location. But how do you expect the other person to respond? Marshall Rosenberg says, when we express our needs indirectly, through the use of evaluations, interpretations, and images, others are likely to hear criticism. And when people hear anything that sounds even a little bit like criticism, they tend to invest their energy in self-defense or counterattack. If we are wishing for a compassionate response from others, which presumably, if we really want to be heard in what we're saying and we're looking to chochiach tochiach, we want to feel heard, we want compassion to be moving in both directions, it's self-defeating to express our needs by interpreting or diagnosing their behavior. Instead, the more directly we can connect to our feelings, to our own needs, the easier it is for others to respond compassionately to our needs. Unfortunately, most of us have never been taught to think in terms of needs. We are accustomed to think that about what's wrong with other people when our needs aren't being fulfilled. If some emotion arises in me, it's because that person did the wrong thing. And then what happens is we kind of assume that there's something objective in the situation that happened. They're late, therefore I'm mad about it. And it's kind of funny because I think we often, it shows up these days, like this speak from the I, language. It's like use I language and speak about how you're feeling. But it can still really fall into this category of like blaming others. It could be like, when you're late, I get mad. Or like, I'm mad because you're late, right? Like we could still do this thing where it's just interpreting and blaming others, even when we're using emotional language and even when we're using I language. And so this is where the kind of need comes in. What is it that's being hit in me? Because when we do that, what we see is that the way that somebody else is responding to us, the way that we're responding to somebody else has to do with us. The response has to do with us. For example, if what my need is in this situation where this person showed up 30 minutes late, if my need is to feel like my time is being valued, if my need is to use my time really well, then I might be angry when they show up. Like, I'm really busy, I need to use my time well. If my need is actually to feel that the other person cares about me and respects me, I might instead feel hurt. If I've actually been having a really busy day and I could super use some alone time, I might be really happy they're late. This might be like a huge gift that this person was so late because I just got to sit there and drink coffee by myself. So when we notice what's going on that way, here's how I'm feeling, here's where it's coming from, then we can bring ourselves into the act of tochacha, as the Sfat Emet says. We can say something instead like, I've been feeling some self-consciousness recently, like a worry that you don't care about me or respect my time. So when you were 30 minutes late for our meeting, I felt hurt. Like, did it confirm that worry? Or, I've been having a really stressful week, and I've been feeling squeezed for every minute, so I felt frustrated when you were late because I already felt like I didn't have enough time. Or, wow, that alone time was awesome. Thank you so much. Maybe text me next time to just let me know you're already late, but we're good, It's a totally different thing, right? Imagine being the person on the other side. You would just respond in a totally different way. So when we take responsibility for how we're feeling, owning the hatred, owning the tightness that's in our own heart, that doesn't absolve the other person of responsibility. We're still asking them for an apology. Right? We're still asking them to take responsibility for their piece in what's happening. We still want them not to be late. But we see the ways that we are also involved. And through doing that, we can more effectively chochiach. We could rebuke our fellows. We can dissolve that hatred in our heart, which might lead us, if we don't, to acting out in ways that we wouldn't want to do. It can bring us closer to ourselves. It can bring us closer to the other person. It opens us up to loving our neighbor. So to summarize, if the Sfat Emet and Marshall Rosenberg of nonviolent communication were to sit down for coffee together, they would both be on time. But if one of them was not on time, I think that they would both agree that the way to offer effective rebuke is to involve yourself in tochacha, to acknowledge your own role in what it is that's happened, or in your response to what it is that's happened. Marshall Rosenberg would say you can do this by understanding how you're feeling, understanding the needs that are behind that, and communicating from that place with care. Through doing this, we help the other hear us, and that dissolves the tightness in our own heart, which separates us from each other, and we fulfill the mitzvah of loving our neighbor as ourselves, and of recognizing the divinity within each of us. Shabbat shalom.